Hi everybody, this is the first part of what's going to be at least a two-part series where I'm going to do a full run through of my digital music setup from every stage of the chain. Now this first part is going to be the actual creation of the files. Where do I put them? How do I store them? How do I tag them? What software do I use? Then second part, I'm going to look at the actual playback of it, my HiFi system itself. There may be other parts to this series if you want them. If there's anything I talk about in this video where you want me to go into more depth separately, let me know in the comments, and if enough of you want me to, I will cover that separately. So it won't come as any surprise that the vast majority of my digital collection comes from my CDs, whether that's CD singles, regular versions of albums, deluxe versions of albums. Also, where I've got DVDs or Blu-rays that have either got exclusive audio content or exclusively high-res content, I'll get those into my collection as well. I'm going to cover how I'm going to do that. But increasingly, I'm finding that I'm doing downloads from official download sites like Qobuz, for example, that are always at least at CD quality, sometimes high-res. And that's for those things where that might be cheaper than buying the physical digital version. Or it could be there's quite a lot of things on there that you just can't buy on CD. So I'm increasingly turning to those sources as well. Long ago, I came to grudgingly accept that they're no longer putting CD drives as standard into laptops and computers. Shame, but there you go. So I've got an external Blu-ray drive here that will do CDs as well. So once I've got my CD in there, I use a program called EAC, or Exact Audio Copy, to rip my discs onto my computer. Now, the thing that I like with this software is that it will read the disc twice to make sure it gets the same results each time. If it doesn't, it will reread the necessary portions of the disc until it's consistently getting the right data. So I'm as confident as I can be that I've got an accurate rip of my music from that CD. There's loads of other programs available that maybe do similar things, but I've been happy with this for lots of years, and it is free software. Phrases that I'm going to be using quite a bit in this video are lossy and lossless, which many of you will know perfectly well what that means already, but just a quick description for those of you that don't. When you rip music from a disc, if you record it lossy, then that's things like MP3s where there is information lost, mainly to keep the file size down. Usually in maybe either very low or particularly very high frequencies, there is data that is just not recorded and not captured in that file. And for a lot of human ears, that's perfectly fine. And probably is for me as well, but mentally, I always want to know that I've got everything there. I want to know that I'm listening to it the best quality that I can do, which is lossless. So when you do a lossless rip, then there is no information lost. The information that's on that disc makes it onto the file that you copy from the disc with nothing removed. I rip my CDs to a format called ALAC or ALAC, which is sort of Apple's equivalent of FLAC files, which I find is a great balance between getting a perfect rip of the data that's on the disc without losing any information, but also a better file size than huge WAV files, which are just unnecessarily large. Now for DVDs and Blu-rays, it's a bit more tricky, and I've tried all sorts of ways to be able to get lossless data from those discs onto my computer, and I'm finally happy with the software that I'm using, and again, it's all free. So I've got two pieces of software that you need to use here. Again, there may well be other methods that you use. The first piece of software is called Make MKV, and that is a piece of software that allows your drive to sort of open up the disc, bypass the protection on it. Now, I'm not advocating piracy or anything like that. You know, this is my discs that I'm using for my own use. I'm not selling these files or giving them away to other people, but it will bypass the protection that's on the disc so that the disc can be read and the contents copied. So that piece of software does that first, and then there is a piece of software that I discovered recently called Music Media Helper 7, which then takes the files that first piece of software created and records them into whatever format you need to do, and crucially it will do it losslessly as well, so no loss of data. Now again, if you want me to go into more detail about that software and exactly like how to use it, then let me know down in the comments, and if enough of you want me to do that, I'll do that in a separate video. But now I've got a system where for CDs, DVDs and Blu-rays, I can get the lossless data onto my computer so that I can then start to tag it and arrange it and put it exactly where I need it to be. So next up is the process of getting the files into the software that I use, and I'm probably going to upset a few people here when I say I'm using iTunes. Still, yes, it's 2024 and I'm using iTunes. Why? Well, I started my iTunes library back in 2005, and over the years there have been many times when I have decided, right, I'm going to move on from iTunes, I'm going to go to something else. And I've come very close, but every time there has been something about the software that I've been looking to change to that has been an absolute deal breaker. No, I'm not moving. Whether it's to do with smart playlists, for example, that iTunes has, whether it's to do with the ability for me to scrobble my plays to Last FM, which that might sound like an alien language to some people. I'll explain a bit more about that another time. But it basically logs everything that you listen to a website, and it's all sorts of useful stats. Very good website. Everything that I've tried other than iTunes has had a problem that has stopped me from changing. iTunes still to this day just does everything I need it to. I don't suffer from the problems that some people say where, oh, it's really slow and it freezes and it crashes. Not for me, it doesn't. It just works. So that's partly why I'm still with iTunes. So I'm going to get all these files into that, whether they're from my CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, downloads, put them into iTunes, and then the process of tagging the files to my very sort of geeky, nerdy standards. Now, when I add the files to iTunes, it's actually saving them to a network drive, a NAS drive that I've got just behind there, just sits in there. That's where they all sit. And that means that I can play the files from this room. I've got a player in another room, the room where I sit and work every day. I've got a player down there I can play them from. I can actually access the files from anywhere in the world. I've been, last year I was away on holiday in Spain, and I was sat on the beach and I was playing, not streaming from Amazon or Spotify, but I was actually playing my file that sat on that hard drive there, streaming it in real time. So it's a setup that I really like. But more often than not, I'm accessing the files from my laptop in iTunes or from my streamer that I'll come on to probably in part 2 of this series. So once I've got them into iTunes, getting them tagged. And now for me, I want to make sure that everything's capitalized. I want to make sure that I know the source of the file, where it comes from. I'm going to talk about how I do that. I want to make sure that I've got things in chronological order as well. So I have got my whole library in chronological order. So when I filter it down to an artist or to a genre or in any way I want, I can see the results of that filtering in chronological order of release. I love that. So the way that I do that is using the sort album field in iTunes. And this was a real pain to set up at first when I decided to start doing this about 10 years ago, getting all my albums tagged like this. Since then, it's just been a case of every time I put a new album in, I put the date of release followed by the album title, and I do it as year, month, date, album name. That means that it sorts it by that absolutely chronologically. So you look at this, if I filter the Beatles down, I can see releases chronologically. Most software is going to sort by year and then alphabetically. Now, I don't want Magical Mystery Tour coming before Sgt. Pepper. That's not right. That's going to mess with my head. So using the sort album dates, I can put the release dates in there and it will sort it in perfect order. There's also a field in iTunes called grouping, and I use that personally to determine where the files have come from. Now, different people can use it for whatever purpose they wish, but for me, I have, for example, if I have ripped a CD that I own, I just put the letter O in grouping. That means I own that CD. If I put OD in the grouping, that means I own a download. OLD, I own a lossy download, so it's not in perfect quality. If I own a download that's in high res, OD, own a download, HR for high res, and then the quality of the file afterwards. So yeah, it's a bit of a geeky system, but it absolutely works for me, because if I look at a song, if I don't know exactly where I got that from, I can see exactly the sort of source of that file. And one thing that we all know with digital information is backup, and back up again. You do not want to lose this. I certainly don't want to lose this. There's 19 years worth of digital library here. I am not going to lose this. So I've got a full backup to my Microsoft OneDrive account, so that I've got a version stored in the cloud, away from my house. Even if my house burns down, I've still got everything safe. I've got 4 different hard drives, external hard drives in this house that the files are backed up to. It's a bit overkill, but these are hard drives that I've just acquired over the years, so I might as well keep them up to date with backups. If one fails, I've got another that still works. And it's not just my music collection that I'm backing up, it's actually all my documents and everything. I am not going to be put in a situation again where I lose, for example, all the photographs of my daughter as a child. Yeah, that happened. Now, one of the things that I love most about iTunes is smart playlists. So I can create, in effect, my own radio station based on my music with this. You give it rules, put a song into a playlist if it matches a certain set of rules. Now, I use the star rating in iTunes. You can rate a song between, well, you can rate it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. 5 I rate as my absolute favourite songs, 4 nearly, 3 really good songs that I don't want to forget about, 2, 1 and 0 I don't bother so much with. So I've got a smart playlist here that shows my 3-star rated songs that I last played the longest time ago. You can see that I haven't played some of these songs since 2017. They're due a play. I've got 4-star rated songs. Now, most of these I haven't played since summer of 2020. So again, I've got 15 songs there that were played the longest time ago. I've got 5 stars, so these were last played even now a couple of years ago or more. These are songs that I absolutely adore, but I haven't played them for a while. So I've then got a playlist that brings all those 3 together into one sort of big radio station, and I can just play this whenever I like. If I'm not playing a specific album, I can just hit play on this playlist and listen to songs that I love that I haven't heard for quite a while. As soon as I play one of these songs, because it's a smart playlist, it no longer fits the criteria. So if I play I'm Moving On by Ray Charles, it's now been played recently, it drops off the playlist. It'll be replaced by something else that hasn't been played for a couple of years. And this is one of the main reasons why I've always stuck with iTunes, because I love the smart playlists. So at this point, we've ripped all the music, got it into iTunes, tagged it all appropriately, and it's ready to play. That's going to be part 2 of this video. Part 1, I wanted to cover really the sort of setup of how the information gets into my digital library in the first place. Remember, if there's any part of this video where you want me to go into more depth about how I do a particular thing here, then let me know down in the comments, and if enough of you want me to do that, then I'll cover that off in a separate video. But part 2 is going to be actually the playing of these files. We're going to look at the hardware, my HiFi setup, how those files are played, and what components do I have in my HiFi setup. That's going to be part 2, so don't forget to join me for that. Subscribe if you haven't done already, because then YouTube should let you know that I've done that video.